Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead, it's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
Round one is in the books. Welcome, everybody, to the Fantasy Football Hustle, powered by Pro Football Focus. I am Brian Drake from FightingChanceFantasy.com, joined as always by the analytical assassin, Dwain McFarland of ETR and PFF. Dwain, how are you? We made it through round one. Any big surprises? Anything kind of jump off the page to you?
Man, we didn't just make it. Like, we get this day once a year, Drake. Like, this is awesome. I'm stoked. I didn't think there were any like true surprises, unlike, the last couple of years. I feel like there've been more surprises. I think a lot of it went the way folks thought it would. I think, the trade that the Giants made, I think that probably surprised some people what they were able to get, out of that pick to let the Bears move up for Justin Fields. I guess 2 weeks ago, it probably would have been a surprise that Justin Fields fell this far, but really over the last couple of weeks, right? Like as, the sources get closer to the truth with these teams, we've heard that Fields was probably going to be sliding, and that he could be a mid-first round pick. And that's just what ended up playing out. So it's one of those years where there really just weren't very many surprises at all. I think the biggest question was just who are the 49ers going to take? And then, of course, the bomb right before the draft, which was Aaron Rodgers throwing a hissy fit, that he wants to be traded and just run Jeopardy now. So good luck. Good luck.
We'll get into all that, folks. We're going to recap round one, talk about all of the fantasy relevant players. We had 5 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 5 wide receivers, and 1 tight end go off the board. So Dwain and I will go back and forth talking about these guys and what you need to know about their scheme, their fit with their new teams, and a little outlook for fantasy football here in 2021. And as you get ready for fantasy football in 2021, know that you can now use promo code HUSTLE for 25% off any PFF subscription and access to all of PFF's fantasy football rankings, locked articles, and data that you can't get anywhere else. Again, that's promo code HUSTLE for 25% off. And Dwain, I was watching PFF's draft show, which I really encourage the rest of you folks out there, if you're going to get into rounds 2 and 3 and 4 and whatever, the rest of this weekend, whenever you're listening to our great podcast, man, this PFF show on PFF.com with Collinsworth and all the guys, even our pal Ian Hartitz, is top notch. It looks like what you would see on NFL Network and ESPN, and the information is just off the charts. Did you get a chance to watch any of it?
Yeah, I did. It was actually awesome. I thought it was great. Like, everybody was pretty much involved. You got to see Eric Eager, who we had on the show last year. Austin Gale, a lot of you guys know him on Twitter. He grinds a lot of film. He does a lot of stuff at PFF, but he was on there. Of course, you got Collinsworth, you got Mike Renner, you got George Shahiri. I think Darius Butler was even on there, and then Steve Palazzolo was on there as well. Like, they got all the main guys. So yeah, it was really good. They had some good banter back and forth. Like, I'm kind of nerdy. I like the data stuff, so I like it when they pitch it over to Eric. And they got Ian in there, man. Ian got, they pitched it to him when it was time for a running back. Since like all the analytics say don't take a running back, but for fantasy, we're excited for running backs.
Let's go to the fantasy nerd. They're talking about running backs. They're going to be, breaking out the Vaseline for this one. But hey, so use promo code HUSTLE, save 25%. It's awesome. And you're going to have a better season. Well, Dwain, let's get into it. The draft kicked off the way we thought it would, with the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence. And this was of no surprise to anybody. So I'm not going to beat anything into the ground, nothing we don't already know. How does he fit into this new offense? We've got Urban Meyer running the show there. What are you looking for from Trevor in 2021?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. You kind of have it's going to be interesting to see like how this offense is going to play out. You have Urban Meyer, who's the head coach, and he's obviously going to have his fingerprints on the offense. But he wants Darrell Bevell to call plays. He and Bevell have no past connections, yet he brought him in to be his offensive coordinator. And then he also has quarterback pass game coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. So I think what's interesting, I think we know there's going to be plenty of running. This is going to be a team that's going to now. Who knows what the defense is going to be able to do and what game scripts may do to this and may blow it up. But when you listen to Urban Meyer talk and you go read, his transcripts from whenever he was first hired, you go back and read, everything, all of his interviews from college. Like he's one of these guys that's, even though his scheme is different, he's very like a Kyle Shanahan, very like a Sean McVay, where he believes that everything is tied to the running game, not so much because it's always got to be a 50-50 split between running and passing, but because everything needs to look the same. And he definitely likes to get his quarterback involved in the run game if he can do that. And I expect to see that with, Trevor Lawrence in year one. I think the interesting part, right, is you're going to see a more conservative offense. I don't think we're going to see a ton of plays. You're going to see a spread offense. We know that Schottenheimer's been, conservative in the past when he was with Jeff Fisher. We know that Bevel was conservative with Minnesota and then later again with Seattle before he let Russ cook one year and then he was gone. Coincidentally, Schottenheimer tried to let Russ cook last year and then he was gone and Pete Carroll got rid of him. But I think, it's going to be a balanced attack. They're going to try to run the ball as much as they can, and they're going to want to set things up and take deep shots. And that's what Bevel, finally got to do more of with Matt Stafford, and he got to open it up and pass the ball more. But if you remember back to, not last year, but the year before when Stafford was healthy in the first part of that year and they had the run game working and they were hitting those deep shots, right, to Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones, and the ADOT was really high and the yards per attempt was really high. So I think there's going to be an opportunity for, the field to be stretched. I think this is an upgrade, obviously, for the receivers, overall. I just don't know, Drake, is Chark going to be the alpha? I think, he's the guy that attacks all levels of the field. Chenault is the guy that can play underneath. He can be the Z, he can be the slot. He's the movable chess piece. They also brought in Marvin Jones, who can kind of be similar to what Chark does. They're actually they're pretty similar, in a lot of ways in the way they play. So there are three decent options, in the passing game. So what I would be looking at for Lawrence, and I haven't sat down and just really done my projections and everything, but I think 3,500 yards, 20 to 25 passing touchdowns in year one, and him picking up anywhere from 300 to 500 yards rushing and another 3 to 5 touchdowns that way. I think that's totally in the cards, for Trevor Lawrence. And I think for dynasty players, long-term, I think he's a guy that can easily be, up, in the 4,000 plus yards per season, 30 to 35 touchdowns per year. So I think he can be a really good fantasy quarterback going forward. I think this year, though, they're going to have a lot of wrinkles, to iron out. But I think, his legs will be enough to help him. And he could maybe sneak into the top 12 quarterbacks. It's going to be tough. There's a lot of quarterbacks, we're going to talk about more guys that picked up more weapons tonight. So I think, once you get past the guys that, really that are the dual threats that have a lot of weapons, there's probably going to be people that'll put Trevor Lawrence in the conversation, versus some of these older quarterbacks that can't run. And I think that's fair. I mean, I think it could turn out to where you could end up with a quarterback that you can stream, or maybe you get lucky, and he finishes in the top 10.
Mm-hmm. While we're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, let's stay here and talk about the selection they made at 25 overall. Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson, goes off the board. He was PFF's third-ranked player at the position. Now, this guy is a home run hitter. He racked up 37 yards that resulted in 25-yard plus gains since 2018. And he's really just a home run hitter. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Everyone now, Dwayne, though, is going to be wondering, oh my gosh, what does this do to James Robinson's value? Because we all know he came out of nowhere, this unheralded player, to fantasy superstardom and becoming a top 10 running back. So now here comes Etienne alongside his boy Trevor Lawrence. Let's break down this backfield and kind of give an outlook of what do we get out of both of these guys. And you said they're going to want to pound the rock. Is there room for both of these guys now, or just nice to know you, James Robinson?
Well, I mean, I think to answer your first question, this destroys James Robinson's value most likely. I mean, they invested a first-round pick. Yeah. Anything's possible, right? James Robinson could hold off Etienne, and Etienne could be a bust, and everything could work out. But we just know that once these teams invest this draft capital, at a minimum, it's going to cause a split situation. And in a worst case scenario, Etienne gives them more home run upside. And maybe they like him better in the passing game out of the backfield. And all of a sudden, James Robinson is just a change of pace guy, so they don't have any capital invested in James Robinson. And that was the danger. And so this is the first draft for Urban Meyer. He goes out and he drafts a running back. So, for me right now, I would rank Etienne, ahead of James Robinson. I just think they've made the investment, that's the way I look at it. And it's nothing against James Robinson, but I think that's just the facts. I think you could have a situation though, to where they're going to try to run the ball enough. And again, this does depend on game scripts and their defense, that both of them can get in the action. But if that happens, it's going to be frustrating, because I don't think we expect the offense to be like superb, right, in Trevor Lawrence's first year. I think it could be surprisingly good. They have plenty of weapons. Lawrence, is pretty polished for, being a rookie. So, I think there is potential there, but we'd rather see one of these two guys win. And if I had to put money on who's going to win the job, I'd say it's going to be Etienne.
Well, let's stay with this running back theme, since that's what fantasy football seems to be predicated on. Everyone wants a running back, even though we're told that they don't matter. And Najee Harris goes off the board to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this, in the analytics world, was seen as a very, very bad pick. Why would you go take a running back when you have all these other holes, especially on the offensive line, where they've lost their center to retirement? You just lost Villanueva. He went to your rival Ravens. So now in steps Najee Harris. We know he's an excellent player. He's big. He's physical. He can catch the ball. He only has dropped 2 passes since 2019 on 75 catchable targets. I think he automatically vaults into the RB1 situation in terms of rookie running backs, Dwain. And here's the thing, and our good buddy Ian Hartitz was talking about this on the PFF feed. It's not that, hey, they have this offense with a bad offensive line. We know that, but who the hell else is there? He's going to get every carry. He's going to get every check down, and he's just going to be the goal line back. Who cares if the line stinks? Great. They're going to give him every touch.
Yeah, he's going to get the touches. As long as he can hold up in pass pro, he's going to get all the touches. And we've seen Tomlin do this before, and Tomlin's actually given us a reason. He likes to have one guy that he really builds everything off of, because he believes that, based on the blocking scheme that they use, really the running back and the lineman have to be in perfect sync. It's like they just have to be in this state of harmony, right? And they work off of each other. So I think it's a situation where, Harris, you're right. If you're looking at redraft right now, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to know that Najee Harris is the most valuable asset out of the rookie class so far for a redraft. Dynasty, I would make some arguments that I would much rather own Jamar Chase, who will have a longer career. I would rather own Kyle Pitts, who will have a longer career. But if we're talking about just redraft this year, I think for sure Najee Harris is the guy that catapults head and shoulders right now, really to the top.
Where do you think he slides in a redraft? Like third round?
We'll see. We'll see. As soon as we start seeing these guys practice, you know how it goes, Drake. People just start foaming at the mouth. They go crazy. He'll start off probably in the third round, then he'll move into the second round. He'll be a second round pick. By the time it's most drafts are really going. And there's a chance that he sneaks, into the early part, the second round. We'll just kind of have to see how it goes. If you remember last year, Jonathan Taylor was a third round pick, and then he crept all the way up into the second round. Remember, Clyde Edwards-Helaire started off as a second round pick, and he ended up being round 1, pick 6 before it was all said and done. So these guys they make dramatic climbs between, early May and then say late July. Like they move up quite a bit. So I think we can see Harris anywhere in the range of a late second to an early second round pick.
Now, I'm no quarterback guru. I'm not a film guy, but everyone seems to be on board with Zach Wilson as kind of the guy. My Eagles were talking about possibly trading up to get Zach Wilson out of BYU. He goes second overall to the Jets. And, what a emergence from this young man from his freshman year to this past season, where his PFF grade was 95.4. It looks like he's 12 years old. I don't know who he got to cover his paper route so he could go to the draft tonight, but he's going to step in to some big shoes here in Gotham, takes over a Jets offense. It's being totally revamped. Robert Saleh, the new head coach. So he's going to have some new weapons. Jets have a lot of work to do, but he's got Mims on the outside. We'll find a running back for him, I'm sure, in the next few days. Thoughts on Zach Wilson and this Jets offense going forward?
Yeah, I mean, he landed in a good scheme based on, when Matt Waldman was on with us a few weeks back, he talked about getting him into this kind of a wide zone running scheme, and something that would really, and I mean, this would be good for any quarterback, right? We're going to talk about Trey Lance here in a minute. But for Zach Wilson, he gets Mike LaFleur, who comes from Kyle Shanahan. You're going to have a run-balanced offense. Again, the passing game and the running game will be completely married. The idea being that you just totally keep the defense on their heels on first and second down. That's the time where you have the opportunity. You still have the element, right, of surprise. Once you get to third and long, people know that you're passing. But first and second down is really where you have an opportunity to keep the defense, off balance. And so if you look at the way that, Shanahan runs his offense, it's very different than what the Jets did with Adam Gase last year, which was a very stagnant offense, right? Ran a lot of 11 personnel, but didn't use motion or any of those things near as much. So if you look at like Kyle Shanahan's offense, it was number one in the league. They used shifter motion on 75% of their plays last year. That by far was the most. So always giving the defense something extra to think about, giving the quarterback an extra cue, right, to pick up on what kind of coverage. They use bunch formations, 11th most. So just finding different ways to get free releases for your receivers to make quick throws. They face base personnel, not nickel, right? For the fourth most in the league, 40%. So they do different things with their formations to keep you out of nickel and dime, so that they can try to get mismatches with tight ends. So I think if Zach Wilson can be okay, this could be a year where maybe we do see Chris Herndon do a little bit more, but you could see a guy like Jamison Crowder take a step back. I'll be interested to see if they grab anyone, Drake, to help fill like a fullback role. They don't have that right now. They could run more 12 personnel, which is another variation of what you can do, with this type of offense. You saw that last year quite a bit from Minnesota, whenever they did that with Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith, but they used their fullback Ham quite a bit too. So I think it's a good situation for Zach Wilson. I think, he ascended really quickly, and I don't think he could have asked to really land in a more friendly scheme. And you already talked about the weapons. I think there's question marks there. We know Corey Davis is decent. He's not what, the Titans hoped they were getting whenever they drafted him in the top of the draft in 2016 or 17, whenever it was. He hasn't quite lived up to that, but he had a solid year last year, right? So, I mean, we know that he can be okay. Denzel Mims, like you said, second-round pick. Both Jay Moyer and Matt Waldman loved Denzel Mims last year, so hopefully he'll grow. Crowder's the guy that's probably going to take a step back in the offense just because you're going to see more 12 personnel, probably see more 21 personnel. So last year, the Jets ran 11 personnel pretty much the whole game all the time. And that's just not going to be the case anymore. So it's really going to hurt Crowder. But as far as Wilson goes, I think this is an offense that's going to give him a chance. Think about Baker Mayfield, how he looked the first season. Then the second season, he tanked under Freddie Kitchens. Last year, he comes in, he gets to play under Kevin Stefanski's offense. What did Kevin Stefanski do? He took basically Gary Kubiak's offense, which is also, Mike Shanahan's offense before Kyle. And look what it did for Baker Mayfield. So I think it's going to give Zach Wilson a chance to get off on the right foot.
Remember back in the day when everyone was convinced that Mac Jones was going third overall to San Francisco? Schefter's tweeting it out. Reliable sources are saying, no, Kyle Shanahan wants Mac Jones. He's the perfect fit to run this offense. A guy I trust, Greg Cosell from NFL Films, said that Trey Lance is, the most advanced and refined quarterback in this class when it comes to conventional play action, and that's what we know Shanahan's going to want to do there. And guess what? They didn't take Mac Jones. They took Trey Lance, a kid that hasn't lost a game since he was in high school. Didn't throw a pick last year, Dwain.
He's only played like 8 games. One game last year. Okay.
Yeah. So we know this kid's going to be raw. He's coming out of North Dakota State. Who knows about the competition? But big-time upside, big-time athlete. Is this who you would have picked in that offense? I know you're a big fan of Shanahan in this system. Would you have gone Fields? Would you went Mac Jones, Trey Lance? What would you have done?
I like the idea of picking Lance or Fields, and here's why. Because think what Shanahan's offense already does to defenses, right? It's already very problematic for all the reasons I just named, around, with Zach Wilson, with Mike LaFleur. There's all the motion, there's all the shifting, there's all the play action. He does everything he can to basically make the defense have to pause and think an extra second, where the offense then has the advantage, right? Because they know what's happening and the defense is still guessing. Trick look plays. Kyle Shanahan ran the 5th most in the league, 14.7% of his plays lined up with some sort of trick look. So those are looks that defenses just aren't used to seeing. So he throws everything at the defense, so they have to be thinking. He was number 31 in deep passes, only 7.5%, but yards after catch, number 1, 6.2, and number 8 in explosive passing plays. Think about that. Number 31 in the league in deep passes attempted, but number 8 in explosive passing plays. And to qualify for that, you have to have 15 yards or more. Number 10 in explosive pass play percentage, which was 15.7%. So even though they don't throw the ball down the field a lot, they still had a very explosive offense. I think what Trey Lance gives them is a much more live arm where they can hit more of the deep shots. They can still hit the stuff underneath, and he's an extra weapon in the running game. Imagine, Drake, you're worried about all these jet sweeps, jet motions, the shifts, the trick looks. And now, the quarterback can run. So guess what? We did kind of see this, for 1 year. It really worked. Remember when RG3 was a rookie under his dad, Mike Shanahan?
Rookie of the year.
Guess who was the offensive coordinator? Kyle Shanahan. So we've seen this, and they ran a lot of that same stuff. Pierre Garçon running these same kind of little bubble screens and stuff that we saw Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel, did you know that last year, 81% of his passes came behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage?
Makes sense. Yeah,
His average depth of target is average depth of target 2.2, but he averaged 12.2 yards after the catch per reception and a 2.26 yards per route ran. Like, that's insane. Like, that's a freaking scheme, Drake. So now I think the cool thing with Trey Lance is, one, like I said, if it works out right, he can give you the ability to stretch the field vertically, which they don't do well now. They can still do all these other things they're already doing, and he can hurt you as a runner. So especially if Kittle, Deebo, and Ayuk can stay healthy, I mean, Trey Lance is in a great situation. If he can somehow come in and beat out, Jimmy Garoppolo right away, I know Ian would take Fields as the number 1. I would take Trey Lance as the number 1 rookie fantasy quarterback if he can come in and we know that he's going to win the job, just because I think the sky's the limit with what Shanahan's going to do. I think the efficiency is just going to be insane for what he can do.
I love that. I'm actually making a note where you just said that you would take Lance as your QB1. That's very cool. So I'm writing this stuff down. See, so when you see all these fun social media posts
if he's like my QB1, I'm just saying I would take him as the lead rookie quarterback.
Yes,
from the class
as your rookie QB1. Yeah.
But I wouldn't. I definitely think, like, in a best ball format, like if he wins that job, he's going to have usable weeks, man.
That's what I was going to ask.
Weeks where he's going to give you 60, 70 yards rushing, 250 yards passing, but he's going to throw 3 touchdowns. And guess what? 2 of them are going to be screen passes that he didn't even have to throw, more than a yard downfield.
He's going to be the way more affordable Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, he could be.
Now, do you think they get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo? There's been a lot of talk, and everyone thought, Jimmy G's going back to Boston to the Patriots. I for one, surely thought that, but as we'll get into it, we'll see that is now not going to be the case. So really, what do? You kind of just have to eat the money, and Jimmy G is just going to hang out for a year.
Well, and I think, having Jimmy G this year can take some of the pressure off of Lance, just because he is coming in from a smaller school. He does have less experience. Mm-hmm. And so if he's got things he needs to work on, he's the kind of, prospect, maybe it wouldn't be terrible if he did sit, for a year. If he's good enough and he beats out Jimmy G, great. But if not, Jimmy G is just basically your insurance policy, and then you move on, after this. I think the other thing we've seen, right, is, Shanahan has had the worst luck ever with injuries. I mean, last year, like, they could never have the whole team, healthy, right? Jimmy G was hurt. Kittle was hurt. Mostert was hurt. Deebo Samuel was hurt. I can't remember if Brandon Ayuk, I think at one point even got a little bit dinged up. Like, all these guys, missed, chunks of time, and they just weren't able to stay healthy. So I think having a year where he has 2 quarterbacks that he feels good about, I think Kyle Shanahan would be fine with that, knowing what he's dealt with injuries over the last 2 to 4 seasons.
We were curious where Kyle Pitts would land. Would someone move up to take him? Would Atlanta trade out of that 4th pick? And they didn't. They took the Florida tight end. They made him the highest drafted tight end in history, going there at the 4th pick. We now have a new system. We've got Arthur Smith coming in from the Titans. And what Arthur Smith did from 2019 to 2020, his tight ends saw 26% of the targets, which was 5th in the NFL. If you just look at last year, they were 3rd in targets in the NFL, which is outstanding news if you're a guy coming into a situation where you go, wait, I got to deal with Julio. I still got to deal with Ridley. And it's not like, oh my God, he's only going to line up at tight end, Dwain. This guy's really a weapon. If you look last year, of all his receptions, 19 came from tight end, 12 came out of the slot, and another 12 came out wide. So he's just an offensive weapon. You can't pigeonhole him as just tight end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You can do anything you want, with this guy. The only limitation will just be how quickly can you learn and how quickly can he adapt to the game to where he's not having to think about it. He can just go out there, and play, and that's different for everyone. So if it happens quickly, Kyle Pitts will immediately, be a terror. The thing he's going to have to deal with, is you have this guy named Julio Jones on your team and another guy that really came into his own last year named Calvin Ridley. So you've got 2 really good players that already demand a lot of looks. And I expect this offense to slow down. Last year, the Falcons were one of the teams that ran, the most plays in the league. They threw the ball all the time. I think you're going to see Arthur Smith try to really rein that in. Again, he's going to have to deal with a defense that's got a lot of leaks in it. He's going to have to adapt to the personnel that he has. But he was number 2 in play action last year. He ran the ball quite a bit. He ran play action on 46.5% of his passing attempts. That's insane. Used to 28, 30% was really high. Arthur Smith used play action on almost half of his passing attempts. Atlanta last year used it on 24%. So, 22% more than what they're used to. Very similar to Shanahan, lots of shifting, lots of motion. I think there's going to be a good opportunity to use 12 personnel quite a bit with Hayden Hurst, and having Kyle Pitts out there together. That can also give them more of that jumbo look, if they want to get against more base defenses and decide, how do they want to attack, either running, or do they think, oh, now we've got them in a base defense and there's no way this linebacker can cover Kyle Pitts, Hayden Hurst, and then you still have Calvin Ridley, and Julio Jones for the games that he's healthy on the outside. So I think there's a lot of different things that Arthur Smith's going to be able to do from week to week to figure out how he wants to beat opposing offenses. And if for some reason, or defenses, if for some reason, Drake, the defense is just absolutely terrible and he just has to put his, the pedal to the metal and run a lot of plays. And he could just do that anyway, right? He was under a defensive coordinator, a defensive minded coach, right? And Mike Vrabel, which we often see them hold back, right? Offensive coordinators and really just kind of make them, basically operate within certain parameters. They give them freedom, but, they give them the guardrails, right? Here's how I want it to run, really, protect the ball, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So if for some reason, they decide, we're just going to have to win games playing offense. I know Matt Ryan can't run. I think you said on our last episode, he would run for negative yards. So he's going to give you nothing. But it's pretty hard to argue with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Kyle Pitts and Hayden Hurst. That's pretty salty, Drake. Would it surprise you if Matt Ryan threw 40 touchdown passes? It wouldn't surprise me at all. If he threw 40 touchdown passes this year.
Defense is going to stink.
4,000 yards, 40 touchdown passes easy. Matt Ryan could easily hit that number if Kyle Pitts does, in fact, come on and contribute, in the offense.
Here's your hot take. You want to wait in your league on quarterback? In the 11th round, you take Matt Ryan. In the next round, you come back, you take Trey Lance. There you go. You got your floor. You got your crazy upside. You're setting your redraft league. You're welcome. Go draft everybody else in the first few rounds.
Yeah, Matt Ryan may have more upside than we think. Now we know because of the rushing, even like Tom Brady last year, even though he threw for, 4,500 yards or whatever and 40 touchdowns, he still only finished, as the 6th quarterback, which shows you how valuable the rushing yards are. But Matt Ryan could have a Tom Brady-like season with these weapons. You know, he could end up being in the top 8. And to your point, you don't even have to take him until way later. Now, the risk is if they manage to control the games more and all of a sudden the Falcons run way less plays. And now you're trying to feed Julio, Calvin Ridley, and Pitts, right? And then all of a sudden Matt Ryan doesn't get enough attempts and maybe the offense is really efficient. Then you get into that Ryan Tannehill kind of thing where you have 1 week where it's great. The next week you wish you hadn't started him.
And they're still going to have to find a running back. Nobody will ever convince me that Mike Davis is the running back of the future in Atlanta. I think over the next few days here, going into draft weekend and days 2 and 3, they're going to find the running back of the future. Well, in Cincinnati, they found their wide receiver of the future, and I'm sorry for everyone out there with the T. Higgins shares because into town steps Jamar Chase. So reunited with Joe Burrow, we've now got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. Don't forget about Auden Tate. Oh, Joe Mixon. We've got a million guys who are under the age of 25, 26 under contract for the next 2-3 years. So things are looking up here in Cincinnati. Hell of a player. Took last year off. Is he your number 1 rookie wide receiver in a dynasty draft wing?
Yeah, he is. I mean, in dynasty, you're betting less on the situation and more on the talent, right? In redraft, you have to wait a little bit more to the situation. I mean, you're still betting on talent, but the situation for the year does count more. But even in a rookie redraft, so far based off of what we've seen happen, Jamar Chase should be the first, wide receiver taken. And this is a good thing for Bengals fans. You've got Joe Burrow, who definitely showed, some really good signs last year. You got T. Higgins, who really operated at all areas of the field. He had an ADOT of 12.9. 49%, of his targets came between 0 and 9 yards, 22% from 10 to 19 yards, and then 27% of his targets came 20 plus yards. Whereas Boyd, operated out of the slot 84% of the time. He had a lower ADOT. 53% of his targets came from 0 to 9 yards, and then 31%, so 10 to 19. So really, Boyd was more in that kind of Cooper Kupp role. Higgins was really more in the Robert Woods role. And no one has really taken over the Brandon Cooks role. So it could really go any number of ways, but this is really the Zach Taylor comes from, the Sean McVay school of thought. He's been building the offense for 3 years. And I think he has 3 viable weapons and he has a quarterback. So I think you could see if they get the offense rolling and they can protect Joe Burrow, which is still, a question. They will get their first round pick from last year back. They were just unfortunate, when he got hurt in the preseason last season. So it'll be interesting to see if the offensive line can be better. I think because this is an offense that if they get it up and they get it going, you could see 2 or 3, you could see 3 receivers, Drake, flirting with, the 800 to 900 yard range. And if the offense all of a sudden went off, right, you could have them all closer to 1,000 yards. But I think Jamar Chase and T. Higgins long-term can coexist. Like you can have 2 really good receivers, especially in this day, of the NFL where, passing is the rage. So I think, Tyler Boyd's obviously going to get his out of the slot, but I think there's an opportunity for these guys, to coexist. If you're a Bengals fan, like you're probably really excited about your offense. Fantasy owners, even though they can coexist, it does cap you a little bit, right? If you think T. Higgins is going to be really good, he also could kind of, cap Jamar Chase, but they could still coexist, and get, 20, 25% of the targets each, and then put up some really good seasons. So, I mean, it's just one of those deals where it's tough to get them to both always hit, on the same week. It's like it's one or the other kind of thing. And so that can be kind of, frustrating. But, I mean, you're betting on the talent, and Jamar Chase has plenty of that to go around.
Speaking of guys with insane talent, the next pick off the board was Alabama wide receiver Jalen Waddle, possibly the fastest wide receiver in the draft. He now joins former college teammate Tua Tagovailoa alongside Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki into what is now a really nice little receiving group in South Beach. So what kind of role do you see him playing year one? Is he going to be kind of a gimmicky screen bubble screen kind of guy, somebody we run on jet sweeps, because you still now have Fuller on I believe a 1-year deal. And I think you can get out of Parker after this year. So Waddle's time will come here in Miami. It may not all be this season, so be patient with him. But an insane talent, and everyone wants to comp him to Tyreek Hill. So I'm excited to see what happens here. And if it doesn't happen for Tua, I mean, someone else is going to come in here and just reap the benefits.
Yeah, and, like a guy like Matt Waldman is, not crazy about just giving comps, without really thinking some of it through. But I mean, he even named Tyreek Hill. Like he really, Waddle can be a game breaker. The thing I would say is that, he could get playing time quicker than we think, Drake. Number one, they could use a lot more 11 personnel, than what they did last year. They're a team that says, they want to be multiple. They want to do a lot of different things. But if you can get Fuller and Waddle and Parker and Gesicki all on the field at the same time, that's a lot to deal with. It's a defense.
It's a lot of speed.
And then also Fuller and Parker aren't both, they're not like, two guys that are known for staying healthy. So easily Waddle could get into some playing time there. Now Waddle's also had his own injury issues, right, that he's had to battle through as well. So I think either via injury or more 11 personnel, Waddle could end up being on the field a lot more than we think right away. This is big for Tua. I mean, really, I know it's only his second year, and you got Fitzpatrick, out of the way, or Fitzmagic's gone. It'll be really interesting to see how Tua does, I think, because he's going to need, now that he's got these 3 receivers, you can't come out and do this dink and dunk stuff and everything's just safe. You got to be able to push the ball down the field vertically. You got to be able to move around and make big plays, with these guys that can break loose against the secondary after you've extended the play. I think Tua's just going to have to show that he can do some of those things pretty quickly because, I mean, they put the weapons around him. So I think this makes Tua, a sneaky late round, pick in deeper leagues, where everybody's going to roster all the quarterbacks, or he becomes, just a waiver wire guy. We can't write the guy off, A year ago, he was a first-round pick that everybody was excited about, and now nobody likes Tua, right? But he's got all these weapons. So if he comes out and all of a sudden clicks, he's the type of guy that could, come the season after this one, we're all like, wow, is Tua a top 12 quarterback, just like we're doing with Jalen Hurts this year.
Yeah, I mean, him and Daniel Jones are really in the same spot. Everything is in front of them. I mean, look at the talent you have. You just have to go make it happen. I like Tua. I think he's a good player. I remember there was a game this past season where I think he threw for over 300 yards. I think I don't know if he was dueling with Watson or whatever, but it was just off the charts. And he looked like a quarterback who wasn't afraid to pull the trigger. And that's the guy we need to see more in 2021, not dink and dunk, and I'm afraid I'm going to get pulled. It's like in basketball. You guys all know I'm a big Syracuse fan. That's where I live. And I would always see these shooters. They're so afraid to shoot because they think Jim Boeheim's going to pull them. And you can't play like that if you're an athlete. You need to go out there and just react. Just play. Don't worry about like, oh my God, are they going to rip me out of here for, Rip Van Winkle, Mr. Beard, Fitzmagic. So we'll see what goes on in South Beach. I'm excited about it. And another guy you can take late in these drafts, quarterback is plentiful. In this draft, it seems wide receiver was plentiful, and Devonta Smith is the next guy off the board to my beloved Philadelphia Eagles. They had to trade up ahead of the New York Football Giants. And Dwain, they made a trade with the Dallas Cowboys? What?
They're not supposed to do that, are they?
Man, oh man.
Yeah, I think it worked out for both teams. Not that I liked the pick the Cowboys made, but apparently the guy they wanted made it back to them. I thought they were going to take Slater, the offensive tackle. But yeah, for Devonta Smith, this is the one, I would put this one right there with Jamar Chase. And here's why, right? Jalen Reagor hasn't proven anything yet. Yes, he's a first-round pick from last year. We don't really know who the guy is going to be. We know we've got Zach Ertz still in the mix as of today. You got Dallas Goedert.
He won't be there.
We say that, but he's supposed to have been gone like 3 weeks ago. So they can't find anybody to take him. So, we'll see what's going to happen. But there's not a clear number one right now on the team. So Devonta Smith comes into one of these unique situations where, he could demand, a lot of looks as a rookie. If he comes in and he lives up to it and, he can play well enough to earn those, he's in a situation where it's not like there's a bunch of other guys sitting around. They're going to get all the targets, especially if Zach Ertz is gone. And even if Ertz is still there, it's not like it's with Carson Wentz, right? It's not like you've got this old connection that Wentz and Ertz had. It's basically, a fresh slate with Jalen Hurts. He's going to go to all these guys. So I think Devonta Smith, like now, if I'm ranking my rookie wide receivers, in redraft, is Jamar Chase, and Devonta Smith is right there. And I could maybe be talked into Devonta Smith being ranked ahead of Jamar Chase, just because you could probably argue with me that there's a bigger chance that Devonta Smith just becomes easily the number one target at receiver on his team. Like that might be more viable for him. Not to say that Chase can't do it. Like he could also do that with Higgins and, with Boyd, but that's also an offense where we know they like to spread it around a lot, like the McVay type offense. And really Sirianni does too. It comes from that Frank Reich type of offense where even T.Y. Hilton, in those years with Frank Reich never saw like 28, 30% target share. Like in his highest year, he saw like 24%. But I think Devonta Smith's the other guy that could sneak up and be a wide receiver 3 in redraft for teams this year.
Yeah, and I was listening to Nick Sirianni doing a little post-pick interview on the website, and he said that, you don't have to just be an X or a Z or a Y receiver anymore. He goes, all my receivers need to know all the positions. And if you look back at an Indianapolis offense over the years that had a T.Y. Hilton, he was a pretty diminutive guy himself. He's not a big 6'4" X receiver. He doesn't look like, Dez Bryant or Randy Moss or any of those guys out there. And he did pretty well for himself. So I think Smith is going to fit in just fine. They just need talent on this team. The defense is going to be bad. They're going to be in a lot of shootouts. Their division is tough. Their division's going to score a lot of points. So I think if you get Devonta Smith on a roster, you're going to be doing okay. And PFF had him ranked as the second best wide receiver in the class. So the Heisman Trophy winner ends up in Philadelphia. Another elite player in college football, Justin Fields. Man, we thought he might go early to, let's say, San Francisco, or somebody could trade up and get him. Well, the Giants, who obviously wanted Devonta Smith, traded out of that pick, and here come the Chicago Bears. So everybody was kind of joking, Dwayne. Did you see it when the Bears traded into this spot? Everyone's like, oh, God, just take Mac Jones. That'll be the best. The most Bears thing in the world would be to take Mac freaking Jones here. But here comes Justin Fields. I really like this kid. Anytime I saw him, and again, I'm not Waldman. I'm not Cosell breaking down film. The kid just makes plays. He looks like a winner. He's accurate. And he wins big games for big-time programs. That's what I want to see. So kudos to the Bears. I love it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And Allen Robinson, maybe he finally has a quarterback. Drake, how would that be?
Maybe. It's the best quarterback he's had since Pop Warner.
Yeah, so, yeah, man, I think I was excited for the Bears. I think, they gave up quite a bit. They, again, they seem to be into trading away a lot of picks. So they gave away this year. Well, they traded this year's pick, right? Which, is what, was part of the trade down. But then they also traded away their first round pick next year, and then 2 other picks. I want to say like a 3rd and a 4th or something like that.
Yeah, I've got the details.
It was pretty expensive. It was to move, the amount of picks they did, it was pretty expensive. But if you really do like Justin Fields, and like you said, we know several people that really do, and you think he's your guy, when it's the quarterback, you have to go do it. So I think Fields gives them a new dimension. It'll allow them to do some different things in the running game. Similar to what we've seen from some of these other guys like Lamar Jackson, et cetera, over the last several years. So there'll be a new layer to the Bears offense that can help the running backs, as far as, creating more big plays. Now it could also be a pain as far as down, inside the 5, inside the 10. Is Justin Fields going to eat up 6, 7, 8, 9 of the rushing touchdowns? And then a guy like David Montgomery only gets to see the ball between the 20s. And then you got a guy like Tariq Cohen getting all the passing down work. This could literally just make David Montgomery like worthless. So I mean, there's lots of ways that we can look at this, but I think overall for the Bears offense, it's a positive thing. I think it does help the receiving core. I would slightly upgrade, all of those players at this point. And I would expect Justin Fields to be the starter on day one, not Andy Dalton.
Yeah, boy, Andy Dalton just can't catch a break. Speaking of a guy who can always catch a break, how about Bill Belichick? Just sitting there at pick 15, and here comes another Alabama product right into his lap. And a great stat on the draft I was watching. No player or no coach has taken more players from a program than Bill Belichick has taken from Nick Saban's programs. He's taken the most of any coach. And, I butchered that stat, but you guys get the point out there. Everyone wants to make this comp of Mac Jones is Tom Brady. Is it just because he's an out of shape white guy? Like, Tom Brady to me is the best quarterback ever to play. And you're comping this kid who had one good year at Football Factory, Alabama. Now, granted, he was the most accurate quarterback last year in college football in terms of adjusted completion rate and all this good stuff. But let's slow down on the Tom Brady comps. I'm thinking it's got to just be because he's a random white guy. That's the only comp between the two. Let's stop there.
Look, people, when they say Tom Brady, I don't think they're meaning he's going to be the GOAT, but just stylistically, he is similar to Brady. He's going to have to win with the games, from a cerebral aspect. He doesn't have a huge arm, but he's accurate. So those are the ways that Tom Brady, wins. So if Mac Jones wants to really turn into something, special in the NFL, he's gonna have to do a lot of the same things that Tom Brady did. I mean, in fact, I took this excerpt from Matt's RSP, and it says and this was before, this was well before New England ever drafted him, but this is what he had in there. If New England wants to reprise what it did schematically with Tom Brady, Jones is a great candidate. His play action prowess, pocket feel, and mind for the game all fit what the Patriots are familiar working with for nearly 20 years. This is especially true when considering how Bill Belichick and Brady worked together. As a coach who helped develop a task-oriented future Hall of Famer, Belichick already has the template for how to work with this type of personality. So, and yes, Drake, even down to the pictures of them without their shirt on. That's wild. I'm like, how can you look that out of shape these days as a college football player? But it's like you said, they just sat there. And what's funny is you see the Patriots draft room, all these other draft rooms, it's like everybody high-fiving, doing all this stuff. It cuts over to the Patriots draft room, and it's just Bill Belichick with a mask on, Robert Kraft's walking around the middle of the room. No high fives, nothing. It's just kind of like, is the pick in? Okay, good. Let's get ready for the next pick.
No draft room was worse than the Packers, by the way. It looked like they were at an airport Hilton. And there was nothing on the walls. It was an odd angle. I'm like, where are they? It looked like Michael Scott was going to walk out of one of the rooms like they were in Scranton. I was like, what is this? Now I see why Aaron Rodgers wants to leave.
Yeah. Maybe they were
anything else on Mac?
No, man. I think overall, it's a positive for him. I think that he landed in the right spot. I think Josh McDaniels will try to get the most out of him. They're still going to have to put weapons around him, but they do have Hunter Henry. They've got Jonnu Smith. Not crazy about Kendrick Bourne. Not crazy, about Nelson Aguilar. But we'll see. It's not a guy you're going to be interested in for redraft. He's definitely worth a swing, in dynasty, but there's not a ton of upside, unless he really hits on all cylinders, right? Because he didn't give you the upside that you get, rushing, and for the rushing touchdowns. So it's a guy that, I don't see him going early in any kind of dynasty drafts. Obviously he would be going later, but even in redraft, he's a guy you're not going to touch. But it's just like what you said, the Patriots got lucky. The guy they really probably wanted just landed right in their lap, and they're like, okay, we'll take him. I think worst case, he can be a guy like Kirk Cousins, right? And if you have a really good coach like Bill Belichick and you can not turn the ball over, you can play some defense, you can win with that kind, of quarterback. If you've got a coach like Belichick, you can't win, if you've got a quarterback like that and your head coach is Jason Garrett, right? There's a difference between those two things. So I'm excited to see what Mac Jones can do, and wish him the best.
Do you think that he comes in and instantly takes that job from Cam Newton?
I mean, that's a good question. I think Cam showed enough cracks in his game, and we saw the lack of commitment from the Patriots to really do that much with him in this offseason or anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably a coin flip that he could come in and take that job right away.
I wonder if Cam, and I mean, he's only making backup money, but he would be a guy to say, you know what, maybe you trade me, maybe you release me. If there's another option out there, I'm sure his agent would put feelers out, but he seems like a pretty prideful guy.
It's like, where are you going to go? It's like most teams are pretty committed to quarterback now at this point. Like, this is kind of the most flush we've really seen the league, at the quarterback position. Not saying that it's all going to work out with all of these teams, but they either got the starter in place or they got a guy that they think is their future. Like, it's tough for me to sit here and think of a team right now. I mean, maybe like the Steelers as a backup plan if Ben got hurt.
I'd say Steelers, Washington football team. Fitzpatrick, for all he
Washington could have came after Cam in the offseason anyway, and they chose not to. They're like, we'll just go with Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so they already had they don't want Cam Newton. Like,
no. And they'll probably draft.
They would have already gone
someone this weekend also. He's a quarterback I like. I'm interested to see where he goes, the kid out of Florida. Speaking of kids out of Florida, Kadarius Toney goes to the New York Football Giants. They obviously wanted Devonta Smith when he wasn't available. They traded back. And, hey, first time ever for Dave Gettleman trading back in a draft, and he did pretty well. So kudos to him or whoever else in that room might have made that move. But they get Kadarius Toney, and it's very split on him, Dwain. I see some people that say, wow, he's a really exciting playmaker. And I see other folks that go, oh, my God, this kid is so raw, and he's got so much more to learn. Now, from PFF's chart here, they say he's primarily a slot, and that's where he played in college. And the Giants love having 11 guys who can play in the slot because, remember, they went and they had Golden Tate while they also had Sterling Shepard and Shepard still being there. So is Toney kind of just a gadget guy at this point because you still have Galladay, you got Shepard, you've got Ingram, by the way, you've got Barkley. I would have gone offensive line because they had the 31st ranked offensive line according to PFF last year, but they wanted a wide receiver that badly. So here he is, Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised too, but he is a playmaker. I think all the things you just said are true based off of everything I've read about him. He's still raw, he's got issues, he has drops, but he is a playmaker, and he's still learning the game. He's kind of like one of those receivers that once he gets the ball in his hand, he can do some things after the catch. He is mostly thought of as a guy that you would use from the slot, which they have Sterling Shepard. So it does seem like they've kind of got all this. They've just got these overlapping, players. You got Kenny Galladay and Darius Slayton on the outside. You got Sterling Shepard on the inside, and now you got Kadarius Toney. So for me, like, this isn't a guy I'm going to be drafting in fantasy this year. It's just too crowded of an offense. I think Kenny Galladay is the top target there. Evan Ingram, if he stays healthy, is going to see plenty of looks. Saquon Barkley gets plenty of looks out of the backfield. And we haven't even mentioned that Darius Slayton can stretch the field and he has his big games, right? And it's also an offense that easily can kind of flex back and forth. Now they have Kyle Rudolph as well to go along with Evan Ingram. So they're going to have games where it's going to be like, we're going to use 12 personnel. That's how we're going to win this game. There's going to be another game where it's going to be, this is 11 personnel. So even assuming he were to beat Sterling Shepard out for the slot role, which is Sterling Shepard's a good slot receiver. He just gets hurt, right? Mm-hmm. But even if he was able to do that, you just wouldn't know what kind of role you could what you could expect from Kadarius Toney week in, week out. It's going to take multiple dominoes to fall for Toney to be worth something, period. Dynasty long-term or, in the short term. Toney's he's a guy that, if you take him in Dynasty, he probably can be an easy taxi squad guy that's not going to score enough points, in the first year. I say all this, and what'll happen. Like Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard will both get hurt, be out for the season when the preseason starts. And then, Kadarius Toney will be thrust into a role. And if that happens, I think, he can make plays. And if they figure out how they want to use him on offense, which again, you got to think Jason Garrett,
oh, Christ,
is the offensive coordinator. So, how you just talked about, coordinators that are like, I want my receivers to know, all the roles. There's different ways to use these guys. We can play to their strengths, all that kind of stuff. Is Jason Garrett really that good at that? I don't know. So it just seems like a lot to juggle, for Jason Garrett. So I think Kadarius Toney could still end up being a good dynasty prospect. But it's not a guy that I'm going to be investing in redraft and even in dynasty. I just feel like there's a lot of things that have to happen, right, for him to become a valuable player, including we still don't know if Daniel Jones is going to be any good. Mm-hmm. So it's just a lot of ifs.
One thing we do know is good is our apparel shop. And that's where you can get some sweet swag like my hoodie. We've got the hat over my shoulder. Dwain's got a shirt right there. We've got our cool new Analytical Assassin shirt. So if you're on Twitter, go over to our page at FF Hustle. Please follow us there. And our pinned tweet is our Viridian apparel store. Go check it out. Lots of cool stuff. I actually got some shirts for my kids, Dwain, and my son rocked it. If you want to see my kid wearing a FF Hustle shirt to school, I have a cool picture of that.
It was a great pick
on Twitter. Yeah,
he didn't get picked on, did he? Wearing that to school?
No, he punched like 6 kids in the mouth. He just walked right in. It's like, out of my way, bitches. Hustle's coming through. So yeah, check out Dwain, of course, at Dwain McFarland. I am at Drake Fantasy, and if you want to get some bucks off at PFF, use promo code HUSTLE. You can get 25% off. I say all this, but we still have my favorite player at wide receiver to talk about, but he may have just landed in the worst spot, and that's Rashad Bateman. This kid, 6 foot, out of Minnesota, great route runner, plays really well through contact. PFF had him as the 4th rated wide receiver. He's an inside-outside guy, played some in the slot, even beat COVID, and he lost 10 pounds doing that. The kid's a monster. I would comp him to Keenan Allen. Goes to Baltimore, Dwain, where the leading receivers last year, Andrews and Hollywood Brown, had 58 catches. I mean, This kid's going to catch 6 balls.
Yep. This was a player that I was very excited about, and this is the absolute worst landing spot ever. Unless they totally change the offense and all of a sudden they start throwing a lot. Who knows? But that's not what we've seen from this team. We've seen this team want to be much more smash mouth. They like to run the ball a lot. They like to use play action. And, oh, by the way, they rotate all these guys. We've talked about this for like 3 years, right, on the utilization report stuff. Like, the Ravens rotate players besides their quarterback and linemen. On all their other offensive players rotate more than any other team in the league, like literally on the field, off the field, on the field, off the field, on the field, off the field. Like, for a receiver, like to have play 70% of the snaps is like a ton. To be out there for 80% of the routes is like a lot. So even if Rashad Bateman becomes the number 1 receiver on this team, unless the identity of the Ravens offense changes to much more of a drop back and sling it kind of offense, this is just the worst landing spot ever. And it doesn't help Marquise Brown, doesn't really help Mark Andrews. It's just kind of a downer all the way around. They signed Sammy Watkins, kind of like, who cares? Devin Duvernay, though, another guy that they drafted last year that a lot of draft nicks liked. Well, he lands in this same, cesspool known as Baltimore's passing offense. And Baltimore's offense is cool, right? We all appreciate it, and we think they do some really cool things, but it's just, there's too many mouths to feed, and they just don't throw the football enough. So it's going to be a hard pass for me on a player that I actually liked a lot.
Question in the chat room, and he asked, does this help boost Lamar at all, or are we still looking at the same offense in the same passing game? I mean, yeah, anything can help Lamar. What Lamar needs is to be more accurate throwing the ball outside the numbers. But sure, this could help a big guy with a great catch radius. I mean, anything's better than throwing to, the Garden Gnome Hollywood Brown across the middle.
I mean, they keep trying, right? They've tried Miles Boykin. They've drafted Marquise Brown.
Willie Snead's running around.
I think he's gone now. But yeah, I mean, they've tried. They've drafted a receiver in the last three or four drafts, right?
They drafted a bunch. They had drafted that James Proche kid out of SMU. They took Duvernay out of Texas. all last
Yeah,
year.
They keep trying, but for whatever reason, it's not working out. And somebody needs to like whisper in Harbaugh's ear and in the GM's ear, we don't throw the ball very much. We don't have to take all these receivers. We could take something else. But yeah, I do agree with you. Like it can't hurt, Lamar Jackson. I think that's actually just a really good point in itself. And we've hit on it a little bit, but I think there just are quite a few quarterbacks that, got helped. The quarterbacks are the ones that actually benefited the most from some of these moves versus just the players themselves, right? If you think about Joe Burrow, he's got several good weapons now. Tua, we already talked about several good weapons. Matt Ryan maybe has, the best three receivers in the league. Maybe you challenge, Dallas now. So I think, a lot of these guys, whenever the team drafts these additional weapons, there is just additional upside, in the passing game. But then the coaching has to follow through, the execution has to follow through. There's so many things. But I think, as far as for where we are right now in the season, yes, I look at those as being positives, for all of those quarterbacks.
And if you're a fantasy player out there or just the casual fan and your team drafts and offensive linemen, don't necessarily think that is a nothing burger for fantasy. Like Rashawn Slater going to the LA Chargers is awesome. That's fantastic for Herbert and that offense, because that guy's a beast and he's going to do great things there. So everything can kind of help here. The Jets getting a tackle. He's a pretty versatile kid. Maybe he kicks inside the guard. That'll help that offense too. So Dwayne, I think what we want to do before we get out of here, rank some of these guys in order of a rookie draft. How would you rank the guys so far that came down here in the first round?
Well, I would say redraft, right? Because there's a lot of great dynasty podcasts, and we do talk dynasty some on here, but like more from a redraft perspective. Like okay. I think that what I would walk away with, this would be my order for the rookies so far. Like Najee Harris, right, is obviously the top one. We've already talked about him. I think Etienne is the second, right? And then I think it's Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith. You may prefer Devonta Smith over Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts. I put those three all really together, right? And then you have the quarterbacks, right? You got, Trey Lance if he wins the job, right? But if not, he obviously goes down in the bucket of bad luck, just didn't land in a great spot for this year, which would be with Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, Trey Lance would all be together. But after Devonta Smith and Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase, that kind of group there, then you just really have the quarterbacks. And different people have different preferences. But right now I would rank it Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. And then I would have Jalen Waddle.
There you go.
So, and Waddle could easily move up, right? Like that's just a guy we'll have to watch. I have the same question as you. Like, how often is he going to get on the field? I don't know yet. If he comes out and he's just killing things early, in training camp, we're hearing all these great things about him. Well, then maybe, he's a guy that moves up into the 10th, 11th round range, right, of redraft, which could be, that's not a bad price, because most likely you're not going to, like, I'm not going to draft Mac Jones or Zach Wilson at all, like in redraft. But I would give Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields a look easily, later. And it depends on the kind of format. And if Trey Lance wins the job, he's the kind of guy that I would give a look. Waddle could still be, a nice late round pick, a nice late round flyer. You just may have to wait, for it to turn into anything.
So that was round one. We've got rounds 2 and 3 coming up on Friday. So Dwayne and I will be back this weekend. If you're hanging out with us, we'll go over some more picks this weekend, and Tuesday, kind of put a bow on everything. So just check in if you're on the Facebook page. Keep following us there. If you're on the YouTube channel, please subscribe, comment on the show, leave us some thoughts on your favorite picks from the NFL draft in the comment section. We'd love to see your thoughts. And again, follow us on Twitter at FF Hustle. He's at Dwain McFarland. I'm at Drake Fantasy. Thanks for staying up late with us, folks, here at 1 o'clock on the East Coast. It's past little Drake's bedtime, so I'm going to get to bed. And if you guys are listening to this on Wednesday morning, I'm still sleeping. So take it easy, folks. We'll catch you later in the week with the rest of the NFL draft recap. Take it easy.